The sterile hum of the medical bay was a familiar comfort to Nurse Zilvara. She had spent years in this place, tending to beings from across the galaxy, each with their own fascinating physiology. As a Zilari, her own biology was vastly different from most species she encountered, but she had studied extensively, ensuring she could provide care to any life form that came through the doors of Med Station Theta 9. Today, her patient was a human, a species she had found to be both fascinating and, at times, perplexing. They were fragile yet stubborn, with an odd mix of resilience and recklessness. This one, in particular, had been brought in after an altercation at a docking station on the Outer Rim. Apparently, he had gotten into a scuffle over a cargo dispute. Humans and their tempers. His name was Corporal David Mercer, and he was currently unconscious on the examination table. His vitals were stable, though he had suffered minor lacerations and some bruising. Zilvara had already treated the external wounds, sealing them with a dermal regenerator. Now, she was conducting a more thorough scan to ensure there were no internal injuries. Her 4 eyes flicked over the holographic display as the scanner passed over his lower abdomen. Heart rate normal. No signs of internal bleeding. Bone structure intact. But then, a fluctuation. Zilvara frowned. A surge in temperature and blood flow in a localized region. That was odd. She adjusted the scanner, narrowing the parameters to focus on the area. The inflammation appeared to be concentrated between his legs. A secondary readout displayed increased blood pressure and hormonal activity. Her medical instincts kicked in. Was this a sign of infection? An allergic reaction to the medication she had administered? Some unknown human ailment she had yet to encounter? Concerned, she reached out with one of her slender, luminescent fingers, gently pressing against the affected area over the fabric of his medical gown. A sudden twitch. Her gaze flicked up to his face, and she saw his eyelids fluttering, his breathing changing slightly. He was waking up. Before she could withdraw her hand, his eyes opened fully, locking onto hers with groggy confusion. Nurse?" His voice was thick with lingering sedation. What are you doing?" Zilvara straightened. "I detected an anomalous inflammation in your lower region and was assessing the severity." There was a pause. Then a slow, dawning horror spread across his face, followed by a strangled cough as he turned his head away. That's not, it's not an inflammation." His face turned a shade of red that Zilvara hadn't seen in any medical textbooks. She tilted her head, perplexed. "Not an inflammation? No, it's, He cleared his throat. "It's a human biological response." Zilvara's frown deepened as she cross-referenced her knowledge on human physiology. Increased blood flow, heightened hormone levels, localized swelling. A realization clicked into place, and she took a step back, her blue-tinted skin flushing slightly. "Oh!" David covered his face with one hand. "Yeah. Oh!" Silence stretched between them for a long moment before Zilvara coughed into one of her hands, a Zilari habit meant to break awkward tension. "Well," she said, recovering her professional demeanor, "I am pleased to inform you that you are in excellent health." David groaned. "Glad to hear it." She quickly adjusted her scanner, pretending to double-check other vitals, but the atmosphere in the room had shifted. She had encountered numerous strange and unexpected medical cases in her career, but this was, by far, one of the most uniquely embarrassing, for both of them. David, clearly attempting to change the subject, propped himself up on his elbows. "So am I clear to leave?" Zilvara, grateful for the shift in conversation, nodded. "Your injuries were minor and have been treated. However, I recommend avoiding strenuous activity for the next cycle." He smirked. "I think I'll manage." As she prepared his discharge papers, Silvara couldn't help but make a mental note to update her medical database. Apparently, human biology had a few surprises she hadn't accounted for. And next time, she'd be sure to consult her references before assuming the worst. Later that cycle, Silvara found herself in the break room, sipping on a cup of Zolari nutrient broth, her mind still dwelling on the encounter. Her colleague, Dr. Trivon, a reptilian Zorvathi, noticed her contemplative state. "Something troubling you?" he asked, his forked tongue flicking out. Silvara sighed. "I had an unusual moment with a human patient today." Trivon's ridged brow lifted. "Unusual how?" She hesitated before recounting the incident in vague terms, omitting the more embarrassing specifics. Trivon listened, then let out a throaty chuckle. "Ah, yes. Humans and their peculiar biological reactions." He shook his head. "You should have seen my first time treating one. Let's just say their digestive system has even stranger surprises." Silvara blinked. "I'm almost afraid to ask." Tryon grinned. "Let's just say I thought one was dying. Turns out, they just had a bad case of what they call spicy food." Silvara huffed a quiet laugh, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. The galaxy was full of mysteries, and humans were one of its most confounding species. But at least, she thought, they were never boring. As she finished her drink, she made a silent promise to herself. She would continue learning, no matter how strange or awkward the experience. Because in the end, understanding was the key to healing.